All right. Julie Jacob here, Indy Parks Planning. Welcome to our second steering committee meeting. I want to thank everybody so much for spending some time this afternoon with us. It's really crucial in the stage we are in the planning process to really hear from all of you folks who have such great experience and expertise in so many different areas. To hear your feedback on what we're about to present. I've done a lot of work since the last time we met in the summer. And so I think we're going to condense a little bit from our steering committee this morning because we really didn't get to go through everything. So hopefully we want to get to a point where you're still all on the call at the end so we can hear from everybody on what you think. So we want to know honest opinions, what you like, what you don't like, and other things that you think we need to know. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah, and she's going to start the agenda.
Great, thank you, Julie. And I know there's a few folks that are just joining us now as well. So let me share my screen and bring up the agenda here. Thumbs up if you all can see that. Great, thank you. Well, again, welcome everyone. Really excited to share where we're at in the process with you all. And have this chance to hear your feedback, make sure it's meeting your needs and just hearing from your perspective in terms of the overall program. As Julie mentioned, we're gonna sort of condense some things here in the beginning. I saw a comment from Andre, he has to go to another meeting at some point. So we really wanna get to the concept here at the end of our agenda, but there are some pieces sort of in this interim that feed into that and that background information that's helpful to understand how we got there. So as Julie mentioned, we've been doing a lot of work since this August. In our last meeting with you, we had a public event that Phyllis is going to talk about. We had a public survey where we got responses and feedback on the type of programming that folks wanted to see. We then analyzed that program on the site to figure out where things fit best on the overall site. And it's really fleshed out into the development of these zones that we'll go into a little bit more in depth. And then for the past few months, we've been developing concepts. So again, it's a very iterative process where we get to test ideas on paper. And then we've been hearing a lot of good feedback from Indy Parks and being able to push and pull on some ideas and in the overall layout of everything. So that's part of our concept refinement. And then this steering committee today, we're going to get your feedback and implement that so that we move into a preferred concept where we pull all of this feedback together on what we're sharing today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Phyllis so she can share with the group just the public event that we had, as well as the survey results.
So most of you, I think, were able to attend the open house event that we had back in September. That kicked off our public engagement process in a big way. And if you remember, we did that because we weren't able to have any public meetings due to COVID that in the usual sort of way that you do park planning and park design events. So it turned out really great. And we had over 300 people that we counted, and then the park thought that we had actually closer to 500 folks attend. That kicked off the survey being open to the public to respond, and we had hard copies being distributed at the event, but also people could take the online survey. And then we did door-to-door distribution of the survey in the 1 to 2 blocks adjacent to the whole of Riverside Regional Park. We had 304 surveys returned. 92 of those were the hard copies. The rest were the online versions. And then in terms of the responses that we got that helped to determine how this concept was going to get developed, the higher the level look at this is that for the question of, what are your top 5 programs that you would like to see in the park, the actual top 3 responses were adult fitness, outdoor youth camp, and after-school programming. We didn't have a specific age group that the after-school program was directed to, so basically just any age group. In terms of activities, the top 3 indicated choices were walking, jogging, running, hiking, outdoors. Number 2 is gathering with family and friends, and then there was boating, canoeing, kayaking, and water sports. In terms of the facilities and amenities that people wanted to see and have in the park, number 1 was comfort stations or restrooms. Number 2 was the natural areas, and then multi-purpose trails was the number 3. Feedback was provided by equal amount, basically, of males and females. And then in terms of household income, there's a pretty diverse spread there. You can just check out the breakdown, the breakdown. A quarter of the respondents lived within 5 blocks of the park. About a third were over 5 miles away. So there was quite a spread there, but the majority of respondents were, a good number were from zip codes that were adjacent to the park itself. And I think it really helped to have the hard copy surveys delivered door to door for that. In terms of racial breakdown, 60% of participants in the survey were white, 35% were Black, and then there were other racial ethnicities represented. So that's just the overview of who responded. Are there any questions about the survey or outreach in general? Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you, Phyllis. Well, as Phyllis mentioned, we collected all of this feedback through the survey in terms of what types of design interventions would be desired at the park. And that really formulates the program or the list of interventions that we would include on the site. One of the first things that we did as a team is back and looked at the overall program.
85.
The overall program that was identified in the master plan that's shown here at the right hand side. And then in this next slide, again, the master plan program is shown here on the left, and we combined it with some new ideas that had come forth since the master plan was developed. Ideas such as archery, RC vehicle racing, ice skating, you see them all here. And really what came out of that then is our program, a list of relevant program ideas that would fit for the site, again, north of 30th Street. Some of the things that you see listed here are more intense recreation components that are identified for other portions of Riverside Park. And so with that, we took the program and then did an analysis here that is shown in our opportunities and constraints diagram. And really this just gives us a big picture as a team to identify places where different elements could be placed on the site. It takes that program and analyzes it against the physical conditions. So, where drainage is happening, where the floodway is. So that tells us in terms of development what can happen. And really, as we started to flesh out these areas, it highlighted for us the development of zones. And as we present our concept, we'll continue to show the detail of how these zones really flesh out. Starting down here in the southeast corner along White River Parkway and 30th Street, we have what's called the river zone. And so that really highlights the access that we have to the river by the 30th Street Bridge and some of the improvements that are happening at the Parks Alliance building. It also identifies just the existing activities that happen with Soapbox Derby and an event gathering down here. The next zone to the north, or I'm sorry, to the west at the corner of Cold Spring Road and 30th Street is what we're calling the racing zone. And so that's that consolidation of a lot of different elements, sort of centering on Soapbox Derby events. Then heading up to the north, and this is all along the plateau, so the higher ground of the site up here, we have what's called the winter zone, and that's the consolidation of a lot of activities that can happen during the winter months. But we also want to reiterate the fact that we're thinking of how this site can be utilized in all different seasons so that we have good activation of this area up here. At the northern portion of the site, we have what we're calling the wetland education zone. And that's really built off the fact that we have former Lake Sullivan in this area and the presence of Crooked Creek and its flow through this area. It's meandering flow through here before it joins with the White River. That is also encompassing the Major Taylor Velodrome area where there's a lot of existing bicycle activities up here in this area. And then lastly, we come to the largest portion of the site, the Central Nature Zone is what we're calling it. And that really is anchored by the conversion of the clubhouse into this nature center. One of the pieces of feedback we heard from our survey is just folks' desire to really keep a lot of this site natural and not overdevelop it. So we've sort of got this unique challenge as a design team to make this a really exciting and fun place to be, but also recognize the great existing features that it has as a natural site, 200 acres of nature right in the heart of the city. So again, that's the opportunities and constraints graphic. And we really utilize that as a framework then to build off of our design concept. And as we work through that design concept, you know, again, we've had a very iterative process where we've tested ideas. And again, this is another portion of our process where we get to test these ideas and hear your feedback today. So with that, I'll see if there are any questions on the opportunities and constraints graphic. And if not, I will turn it over to my colleague, Don Staley, to share with us, to walk us through the design concept. Don.
Thanks, Sarah. So we took all of that information and used the opportunities and constraints diagram as a generalized framework for moving forward, and then continued to massage the specific areas, the specific zones, and the specific detail within each zone. So some things moved around a little bit, but fundamentally the 5 zones stayed essential to the broader concept. And so it was just a matter of fleshing out the details within each zone, the connectivity between the zones, things like that. And I want to make a leading comment is that several of the zones have pavilions or structures, and those provide great opportunities for public restrooms at actually 4 of the zones. So that addresses one of the major desires of the public engagement survey right off the bat, which is a good thing. So we're going to start by talking about the river zone down in the southeast corner of the park. This is the area right where the historic 30th Street Bridge is, with the good river access. It's also the direct connection to the rest of Riverside Park. This is really the only place where a park user can actually, as a pedestrian or a bicyclist, can get from the rest of the park to this part of the park. So the first thing I want to point out is that as you cross that bridge, the first thing that one will encounter there is an overlook that we put right at the intersection. And that provides space for, whatever signage, whatever entry signage to announce the park. It also provides a nice spot to, to gather and sort of get your bearings about what's going on down in the river zone, and then make a decision about, do you want to go north to the picnic plaza and the shelter area, or do you want to go to the west over to the Soapbox Derby Plaza and that area at the bottom of the track there. So when you look in detail, you'll see the dark trapezoid in the center of your view. That's a new shelter. It's next to a picnic plaza that sits on essentially the site of the old historic pavilion, and then an expanded parking lot all along the parkway that heads up north. Right now, I think the parking lot roughly serves about 40 to 50 spots. And after having some meetings with folks involved in events for the park, it was decided to try to expand that to 250 spaces. So that's what we're showing here is an expanded parking arrangement there. It also keeps parking close to the parkway, which facilitates river access. So if you are bringing a boat, you can park and you're relatively close to the crossings that get you across to the marina site and down to the river via some improvements that are planned for that riverbank. The shelter itself has restrooms, as I mentioned before, has a shelter proper, and then has a stage on the west end that looks out over an event lawn. And that event lawn can be, a very intimate space right near the stage, or it can expand into a pretty large area that's so big that it's not hard to get so far away that you could probably not even recognize what's going on the stage. That's a big area, but it's really convenient. And one of the things we tried to do in laying all this stuff out was be respectful of the existing trees on the site. So things are organized in such a way that they have minimal impact on the existing large trees on the park site. There's a new plaza shown around or near the finish line of the Soapbox Derby, and that's designed to be multifunctional and be able to facilitate Soapbox Derby activities that could be used during non-Soapbox Derby times for other events. But it just basically formalizes what's currently kind of leftover driveway space that's being used for that purpose. So it dresses it up a little bit more. It includes some picnic areas adjacent to it, and also has a trailhead that leads to the north into the trail system that heads up into the broader natural area. We've also included a new trail, and I want to point out that this is a good time to talk about it. As you look at these maps, you'll see some trails are solid line and some trails are dash line. The dash line trails are all existing cart paths, and the solid line trails are new proposed routes that we've thrown into the concept to provide greater connectivity and make the overall park function. I think that's essentially all of the components down here at the river zone. So let's move up the hill, up 30th Street, and we'll go up to what we're now calling the racing zone. This started out as the adventure zone, and we had some focused discussions with Soapbox Derby about their desire for a new building. And that went back and forth as far as location. It ultimately landed at the top of the hill, and it made sense as a result. We sort of have talked about the consolidation of some racing activity up there at the top. So there's that new building for Soapbox Derby. It has essentially a long garage space next to a large parking lot that will facilitate Soapbox Derby activity and provide parking for the park. But it also includes a more architectural pagoda structure, much like the Motor Speedway's pagoda on the south end, which will be a nice landmark for that corner of the park. And that pagoda structure is shown next to a cross-hatched plaza space. And that was an important feature, not only to support Soapbox Derby activities, but to provide some connectivity beyond the racing elements, because that building will house restrooms. And it's important for park users who might be just on the trails to, have a natural way to get to the restrooms that are available in that part of the park. So that's why that plaza comes out and touches one of the walkways that heads north into the park. There's a more formalized entrance at the corner for pedestrian access to the park. and it ties into the existing trails that head down 30th Street and then up Cold Spring Road. We've modified the trail up Cold Spring Road a little bit to open up some space for an exercise trail in that area, which would have a measured loop for jogging, possibly a quarter mile, and then a series of exercise stations along that trail to provide some space for recreation and fitness and that kind of activity, which was desired in the public input. We also included an RC track. There's a growing interest in radio controlled cars, and they use a dirt track kind of arrangement that's much like a BMX bike track. And so we've shown a space for that on the east side of the Soapbox Derby building. There's an open space there that's suitable for that. And by tucking it on the east side of the building there, it consolidates the racing facilities to the east of that space and leaves enough space between there and Cold Spring Road that park users can still have a park experience if they just want to enter at the corner and then move north into the park. So that worked out really well. And as park users move north and cross the entrance drive there that's been moved to Cold Spring Road, then they encounter another trail which gives them the option to go left into a dog park that occupies that 4-acre area that you're seeing there, or to go right and hit a trailhead that then starts an experience of either taking an upland trail along the edge of the woods or diving into a treetop trail that's elevated over the bank that heads down to the floodplain and goes through the forested area there on the bank. And that treetop trail would have overlooks, one of which might be an overlook of the site of the city's first zoo, which happened there just down the hill from the Soapbox Derby facilities. So moving north, then those trails proceed north, and from the treetop trail, then we're showing another trail that's a different kind of treetop trail experience that we're just calling the Treetop Walk. And it's more of a suspension bridge experience, and it provides a little more adventure for folks that want it to be a little more, I don't know, Indiana Jones-like, I guess, but just to make it a little more exciting. Whereas the Treetop Walk, the intention would be for it to be accessible and you know, easy to navigate, but would get you into the tree canopy. The Treetop Walk would be a more exciting kind of suspension bridge experience and just provide another level of excitement and adventure in the natural environment. And there's an image of the kind of facility that might be. So something pretty exciting. And then as those trails move north, then they move up toward what we're calling the winter zone. And it's really an all season activity zone, but it has many features that function traditionally as winter recreation, one of which is the existing sledding hill, which heads east down that 40-foot drop to the floodplain. And also then a new pavilion at the top of the hill, which can provide indoor gathering space around a fireplace for warming up. It can have views out over the landscape. It can provide for skate rental or toboggan rental or any kind of concessions that might be desired there. And it can also provide service for an outdoor gathering space that we've labeled a beer garden. We've gotten some feedback from the neighborhood that an all-time alcohol use area might be a problem. So the idea there is that this could function as a traditional beer garden, but it could also function primarily as just an outdoor gathering space with seating and shade trees and just a very pleasant place to gather outside, have refreshments from the concessions part of the building, that kind of thing. South of that is a skate ribbon. And that's essentially the modern version of an ice skating rink. So rather than have a rink itself, which is just a rectangular space, this is a track, and it allows a route for skating and can also then have, in addition to just the area where skaters can loop around the track, we've also included an ice skating trail that goes down into the woods and provides a little bit different experience there. So whereas the ribbon would be out in the open, the skating trail would dive into the woods and provide a new kind of fun experience for that as well. There are a couple of locations around that ice track that we're showing for outdoor fire pit gathering areas for warming up, having hot cocoa, just enjoying the winter aspects. And then, you know, like I said before, in the summer, this then converts to a roller skating opportunity. Other ice ribbons that we've encountered that have been built already around the state and country are also using parts of the track for things like yoga or other kinds of gatherings that need a hard surface. So, excuse me, becomes a multi-purpose space. I do want to point out there's a small stage at the south end of the beer garden area, and that our thought there was that it could be multi-directional, so it could serve small entertainment at the beer garden gathering area, or a larger event could be served off the back of the stage toward the event lawn that's on the interior of the skate ribbon. So it provides some flexibility for multiple kinds of uses at this site. As you move north from the pavilion, you get over to an advanced sledding hill, which utilizes the old 18th fairway, which is very steep, but could provide exciting sledding for more advanced sledders. And then also off of that area, we launch a toboggan run. And the idea there is that this is an all year round toboggan. There are new toboggan facilities now that function all year round. So they can be in operation in the summer as well as the winter time. And that snakes its way down through the woods and peeks out over the sledding areas for providing some exciting experiences for everybody on the site, and then has a lift coming back up. And to address Brad's comment, yes, if you're going to do snow recreation, you're probably going to have snow machines to create snow in this climate that we live in. So in the wintertime, at least. So I think that covers everything at the winter zone. There's one overlook a couple of overlooks I want to point out. There's an old green just right there where Sarah's circling that has some moguls around it that we think is a good spot for developing an open green space overlook with a shelter, but also could function as a small child sledding area in the wintertime. And then at the top of the main sledding hill, we've shown an overlook deck because the views up there are terrific. You can see the clubhouse from there. You can see out over the floodplain landscape. You can see Riverside High School and downtown beyond. So it's just a spectacular place to be above and looking out over the entire park landscape. So pretty exciting. And then as we move north, so Crooked Creek divided the old golf course from the Major Taylor Velodrome area, which have been traditionally very separated parts of the park. But up there is where Crooked Creek makes its connection from the west side of Cold Spring Road, moving east toward the White River, and used to flow into a managed Lake Sullivan, which is no longer a lake. And we discovered in some of our research that it's pretty obvious why, because the dredging records were pretty frequent, and I can imagine it just got so burdensome that it just became more trouble than it's worth to try to keep that an open water lake. But at any rate, it's a wetland and provides a great opportunity for education. So what we looked at up here was creating a series of trails that take advantage of that landscape, that riparian landscape, which is fairly unique in this part of the state in terms of how the creek engages with the river and its meandering character. So we're showing a loop trail that has a trailhead up in the parking lot at the velodrome, and then loops around, has several observation overlooks for interpretive educational material, and then actually makes two connections back to the clubhouse, which is important because if the clubhouse is going to function as the central nature center, this allows people to come there first, get orientation. Tours could start from there and then head out into the wetland for that kind of experience. You know, people who want to just come on their own can go up to the velodrome, can park in the parking lot, hit the trailhead, cross over, and go into the wetland experience from there. There's a couple of changes up in the velodrome area. Right now, there are existing mountain bike trails. There's the existing velodrome itself and the BMX track. There's an existing skate park, but there's an expansion planned, and we're showing the extents of that expansion. And then to the west of that skate park, we're showing an area for a new pump track, which is it's an undulating bike route that the idea is that you use momentum and coast yourself across this track. So a nice way to get exercise on a different kind of bike experience. And then we are showing a new plaza between the two with a shelter to kind of serve those two, and a new road crossing there to make a little safer entrance from the parking lot to those facilities. Over on the I-65 edge, after some consultation with the Indy Parks team, we're showing gates at each end of that road so that it's no longer publicly accessible for traffic. There's been some illegal dumping and evidence of illegal activity back there, so they would prefer that not be accessible to vehicles. And there are two existing parking areas that we imagine being converted to overlooks for wetland education. And then we've proposed a third one at a very beautiful location where the current stream channel makes a bend, and the landscape opens up, and it's just really a quite lovely spot to stop and learn about the wetland. So then if you move south from there and we cross back over Crooked Creek and we get to the old golf clubhouse area, this is the area where we're centering wetland education. And where the clubhouse is shown now, you can see a dashed line that represents an addition to the clubhouse to create more space for a full-blown outdoor education center. It's leveraging existing infrastructure. It's a building around the existing parking lot. We're showing expansion of that parking lot to the south. We're also showing the addition of an archery range on the east side of that parking lot, which can function as a phase one using the existing drive, and then with a new curvilinear drive can be expanded into a full-blown facility with two long ranges and one short range. Along that new entry drive, we're showing parking on the way in that can serve a picnic grove between two demonstration gardens. And you'll also see a nature play and education area in that zone, one both south of the new parking lot up by the nature center, and then one south of the demonstration gardens. So a very robust area full of variety and the opportunity for picnicking and shelters and things like that. So as you move south, we're showing a new greenway along the parkway, and that connects to overlooks, periodic overlooks that tie into trails that bring you into the park and include outdoor nature play and education areas, so that if you're on the greenway, you get quick, easy access to some play areas and some education for the site. And they can either function as destinations on their own or just gateways into the rest of the park. As you come down south a little further, another opportunity that we're showing here is the alignment of the old Big Four Railroad that existed at the turn of the century when the golf course was first opened in 1902. There are several mounds that cross the site that used to support that railroad. And those are fun, historic interpretive locations, but they also are real opportunities for creating outdoor gathering space in that central nature zone, which is going to have a lot of plant material. And these are opportunities for getting up above that landscape and being able to see out and really enjoy it from a slightly elevated perspective, which gives you nice long views. And could include shelters or bird blinds, be good nature viewing spots. Could also be potential locations for public art, things like that. So, and now I also want to mention that in this central nature zone, this is that area in floodplain that, we heard a lot about. We really just like the park the way it is. I mean, this is what people loved about this property, was the fact that this is a vast, undeveloped open space right there in downtown Indianapolis. And it really resonated with people at the open house and in the surveys. And but one of the dimensions of that is the matrix of plant material and how that's executed. And we have not dug deeply into that other than to understand that we kind of know what it is, what it wants to be. And we have to take into consideration the balance between open mode areas and areas planted with native plant materials so that it doesn't feel too claustrophobic for trail users, so that there are places where people can get out and have, you know, some space to recreate within the context of this natural bottomland, what's essentially a successional bottomland forest, but will really have a lot more in terms of its character, will be a lot kind of something between a prairie and a beginning forest experience. We've added a lot of east-west cross trail connections because most of the golf course paths are primarily north-south routes. And so we've just provided connectivity where we thought it made sense in order to create a real network of trails that allows park users to get to places conveniently without, you know, overwhelming the site with too much development. So I think that pretty much covers all the details in general for all of the zones in the park that are developing in the concept. And bear in mind, this is not done. This is a concept in flux, and we're constantly working on it and looking for input. So that's the whole point of this meeting, is just to say, you know, we've worked through a lot of technical details. We've tried to apply the program and the public input as best we can with what we know, but we still don't have your feedback. So it's important, and it will feed into the decisions that create the final product here. So.
Thanks, Don. And I'm seeing a question in our chat from Matthew, just about access in terms of vehicle access points besides parking lot. And specifically asking about emergency personnel, maintenance contractors, ground upkeep, you know, and we envision that a lot of these existing trails through the site would be utilized for those activities. As Don was mentioning, we'll want to put some thought into just keeping those pathways free. So, you know, one technique that we've seen is that you have some mowed turf grass along the trails, much like we do now. And then the larger areas can be taller plantings. So one other note, I think, in terms of circulation that I wanted to highlight, you know, we noticed that this existing cart path is very steep up the sledding hill. And so one idea that we've recommended is to make this a switchback sort of trail